This is the only part of the wood that was rotten. So, I am going to have to cut a larger circle here, and I will need to make a new wood circle for the center of this tabletop. I have to disassemble all the pieces of the tabletop. So, first things first. I number each triangle, and I mark the same number on the lower rail. Now I can remove all the screws. And I'm surprised that, despite being so rusted, almost all of them come out without much trouble. Although some of them break off at the head, and later I will have to finish removing them. If you have ever restored a piece of furniture, you will know that there are always one or two that are particularly difficult to remove. The easiest part is removing the bolts that join the board rails to the metal table leg. And now I am going to remove the screws that I mentioned earlier. With the locking pliers, I can easily turn the ones that have their heads broken off. And now, piece by piece, I note the number, and now I can sand all the wood well, removing all the paint. First with medium grit sandpaper, and then again with fine grit. It is not seen in the video, but later I sanded all the pieces by hand. I try to sand everything well, but carefully to maintain the right angles, curves, and the rounded edge at the front. When I finish each piece, I stick a piece of painter's tape on it and write its corresponding number. I sand all the pieces, also the rails that go underneath. This is how they were, and this is how they turned out. The structure of the lower rails form a hexagon. I also put a label on them, with the number of all the triangles that correspond to each rail. And yes, there is space for all these wooden triangles. Here I mark where I am going to cut the tip of the triangles. It is the only part of the tropical wood pieces that is a little damaged. In case there was any doubt, here we can see that this tropical wood is almost perfect. I prefer hand finishing to remove any marks. Here you can see that I have slightly rounded the corners of the cut I made. Now I'm going to cut the round piece that will be placed in the center of the tabletop. I sand it well, like all the pieces of this garden tabletop, and I need to cut another larger circle that will go underneath the first one. I will use it to screw in the tips of the tropical wood triangles from below. I drill a guide hole in the larger one, and I put in a thin nail so that the tip protrudes on the other side. Here I pre-assembled all the pieces of the tabletop, and I have the central circle centered on the board. I measure the board in several places to make sure it is perfectly round. Here I drill a shallow hole, and I center the large circle on the smaller one. And now, with a countersink bit, I drill guide holes that line up centered at the tip of the triangles. Here we see that I use some cardboard spacers to maintain the spacing between the wooden triangles. Now I am going to drill the guide holes to the length of the screws. It seems like a bit of a thick drill bit, but I already checked that these thick screws will grip well in the hole made by this drill. Here I make a good mark to know the position where the circle goes. These holes are for screwing the lower circle to the upper one. The holes were a little shallow, so with a slightly thinner drill bit and a depth stop, I drill them a bit deeper. Now I enlarge the holes in the round piece. Only in the round piece. I want the screws to pass just right, but without screwing in. This way they will pull the lower wood triangles, and so they will pull the triangles against the circle. Okay, let's check how it fits with the screws. I look for piece number 1. And I put in all the screws. I center the metal leg on top. We will see it later, already restored and painted. Here I have the anchoring holes of the table leg inserted in the corresponding holes in the hexagon. And I mark the position of the anchoring bolts that go in the wooden circle. Now I drill a pilot hole in those marks I made. On the hidden side, the one facing the small circle, I drill a countersunk hole for the bolt heads. Centered with each countersunk hole, I drill a through hole to the other side. There the bolts fit perfectly. Well, as I said, it's perfect. This piece fit here, on the beautiful metallic pedestal of this garden table. Before applying the outdoor wood treatment, I have to transfer the numbers to a place where they won't be seen. It is not shown in the video, but I do the same with the rails. Before applying any stain or primer, I thoroughly clean all the pieces of dust with the air gun. For the non-tropical woods, I apply a transparent, hydrophobic outdoor stain. Some wood rods keep the pieces separated from the protective paper on the table. Once it is dry, I give them a gentle sanding with very fine sandpaper to smooth out any raised fibers from the first coat. Well, you can see that the hole in the glove is perfect for checking when the wood is smooth and soft. Then, I apply a second coat of stain. This will help the wood withstand the weather for a good while before needing further treatments. The circle I drew on those holes indicates how to align these two pieces for screwing them together. Now I am going to apply 2 coats of a special primer for tropical woods. We will cover this primer in an upcoming video, but I can tell you now, it is not for typical teak patio furniture. And after 2 well-applied coats of the product, look at this beauty. I have all the pieces ready to assemble this tabletop. First, I insert the bolts into the rails. Now I can assemble all the pieces one by one, each with 3 stainless steel screws. Using a punch, I align the holes one by one and insert the screws. I have already checked and tightened all the screws, and here I have this beautiful garden tabletop already restored. Wow, I love it. It looks spectacular. In a moment, we will see the complete table with the restored metallic legs. It is going to look perfect in the garden or on the terrace. Thanks for watching the video, and if you liked it, remember to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell.